What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Portal is heating up. Spring is done. We all saw the spring game, did the spring game breakdown on that Breakfast with the Canes show we did on Sunday. So now it is time to focus on the portal. We will talk top 5 portal needs for your Miami Hurricanes. A lot to get into. I don't think the needs are as big as they were maybe last year, but still some holes that got to get filled, and it's going to be a very, very interesting portal season. First, I want to talk about some folks that already got all their needs taken care of. That is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's going on, D?
Feeling good, man. Like doing these morning ones here. Just full of energy, ready to rock and roll. Who knows what the day will bring? We'll have to do another one in the afternoon if something crazy happens. But hey, it's portal season, man. That's how it goes.
So you're saying something might happen this afternoon? You didn't tell me that before the show. What are you teasing here?
We'll see. I mean, again, I haven't gotten my my scoop roundup. I will be, just so you guys know, I'm going to be really working sources, letting the dust settle a bit, and then kind of give you guys the portal news direct from sources here on the bank, as we've been doing every single portal season. I think last year you saw pretty much the things that happened. We talked about them ahead of time here on the Canes Insight Daily Podcast. So this show's a little different. This is really just sort of my opinion and Pete's opinion, talking about where we see some needs based on where the team is and some, types of players that I think could fit and really help this roster based on watching spring practice, seeing where we're at, studying the roster, knowing certain things, and kind of just trying to piece this thing together as we go over the top in the ACC, trying to win a championship. So,
yeah, and I think some of this, I mean, I don't know if it's nitpicking, but I don't think it's severe. Like, I don't think some of these needs are extremely severe necessarily, like they maybe have been in the past, but you need to add some depth, I think, at certain spots.
Yeah, I think so. And it's really, to me, about the type of a player, right? We need a player here, a player there, but it's not just any kind of player. I think we need a certain type at each of these spots to fill, pieces of the puzzle in this roster, complement where someone might be weak. Maybe a player in the portal could bring a certain specific strength, like we'll talk about here at wide receiver. Good morning to you, Canes Cat. He's saying we need depth at slot corner. That wasn't even on our list, nickel corner. So Canes Cat's coming in hot already with the need at nickel corner, which I think, look, you had Chris Ewald. He was hurt. He missed the spring game. I think he's going to contribute there. You had Isaiah Taylor have a pickets at nickel corner. I think he'll compete there, not necessarily, front runner there, but he's going to have a chance. He's working hard, and he's showing hit a really good spring, actually. Charles Brantley, we know what he can do at the nickel. I think that's going to be his best spot. More of an outside guy at the Big Ten level. But I think here, there's just the size of some of these receivers at Syracuse game. I'd like him in the slot or covering the slot as a nickel. I think his instincts, his quickness really fit in there.
And this is good morning, Cliff. How you doing? This comment by Canes Cat C305 is it's kind of the problem with spring practices and the spring game in general, because he says they couldn't cover Ray or Tony at the spring game. But if those guys weren't getting open, which, we'll talk about receiver as a need here, spoiler alert. But if those guys weren't doing anything, you would have said we need to take 3 receivers now in the portal. So that's just how this stuff goes. Listen, guys are going to get beat. That's the name of the game. I feel way better about DB right now than I did last season.
Yeah, listen, when you see white guys wearing the number 40, so when you see white guys with a number 4 beginning on their jersey on the field, you got to kind of understand the context.
Hey, Big Ruskovich wears 44. Come on now.
That's right. Big Russ. Someone sent me, Evan Freed sent me in the comments, Ruskovich custom jersey picture for all the hyping I've done on him. But let's get started here at the position that we get the most questions about, which is wide receiver, Pete. I think the real question is going to be 1 wide receiver or 2. I really think in terms of impactful guys, and remember, when we talk about all these positions, there's a dollar involved. We'll see with this house settlement and the rev share and the salary cap, which I think is illegal anyways. But just, there's putting all that aside. You can't just go to the store and say, hey, I'd love to have a Jalen Carter at defensive tackle. Let's get one, right? First of all, they got to be available. And then the price has got to make sense for the other thing to do on your roster. Remember, some of your own players get raises. That's a huge part of this that the fans don't see. It's not just, hey, I'd love to get, more depth on the defensive line. Let's just go grab 5-star defensive tackles on the port. It doesn't work that way. You have to, when you look at one position, you got to worry about the other position. So this is why I say type of player is important. So a wide receiver, I do think this could be one of your big bullets as far as your budget, is to get a big-time receiver. In the portal last time, you had Eric Singleton come on to visit. He ended up going to Auburn, the speedy wide receiver from Georgia Tech. I thought that was kind of the prototype of what we are trying to do here. There's no guarantee a player like that's going to be available in the spring portal. You just kind of have to wait and see how the thing shakes out. But that, to me, is the model of what it should look like. And Miami was in that game. The problem wasn't the money with Singleton or the interest in the city and the school and everything else. It was more, we did not have a quarterback at that time. Of course, now Carson Beck lined up to start for the Hurricanes. So that's kind of what I see as the big bullet at wide receiver. The question is, do you bring in another depth piece? Which if you put a gun to my head right now, I would say the answer is probably yes on the second depth piece, just based on what you saw in the spring.
Yeah, I would agree, just because right now you're relying on freshmen. And again, when you have a reliance on a freshman, it's not that you don't. If they go out there and earn it, and like if Malachi Tony keeps doing what he's doing, then I have no problem with him being, a starting slot wide receiver. But you need guys to push what you have there in the room right now. And I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But at the same time, and I said this yesterday on the show, don't just take anybody. You've got to get guys that you really think are elevating the room from a talent standpoint.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to wide receiver, so big bullet, right? We're at the big bullet stage here with this wide receiver 1, 2. I'm not going to focus on that number because I really think if JoJo Trader plays the way he's supposed to play and the way he showed in spring before he got nicked up, he could be that wide receiver 1. CJ Daniels showed some flashes. So I'm not even getting into wide receiver 1, 2, 3, just in terms of what they're going to do on the field. I think Miami could use a veteran, proven guy who's caught passes at the college level, outside receiver with the speed to scare a defense. Appreciate you, Cliff. Everybody hit that like button, subscribe to the show. With the speed to scare a defense. That is what I think we need to add to this roster. You look at the guys we have. CJ Daniels, he's getting quicker and faster. We're looking more like the Liberty CJ Daniels based on what you saw in the limited practices after he came back from foot surgery. I saw him separate and do those things. He's very good at contested catches, great hands, very reliable. We know that. So that's that role. JoJo Trader, the ability to change speeds, the smoothness, the body control, just a very, very natural athlete and somebody who makes it look easy. He's going to do his thing. I think he could be that first round, second round type receiver on the outside. In the slot, we talked about Malachi Tony in the spring game, Ray Joseph. I thought both those guys made me feel comfortable about that position and guys that can get open, short area, quarterback friendly. What you do not have on the roster, maybe Nick Carr gives you this, but he's been nicked up and he's younger. He's still unproven, is the ability to truly stretch the field with pure speed. And I think that is something that you're looking for, and not necessarily a Tyler Harrell type where it's just he's only fast and he hasn't really produced. You're looking for someone who's coming off a productive season with some speed. That to me would be worthy of one of your big bullets in this portal season.
Wanted to get to this comment real quick, D, from Carl Davis. He said, should have paid Martinez, Arroyo, and Horton $1 million each to come back, in my opinion. I mean, look, Arroyo is going to make more than that next year, without a doubt, based on where he's going to get drafted. Martinez at his position, it was just, that's just unlikely. He's, at this point, I don't know what else he could have done from a production standpoint. So that just wasn't going to happen. And then Horton, I don't think Miami was that far off that number, knowing what I know. So with Horton, and I've said it again, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but I don't think that was necessarily all a money play. Remember what Miami's QB situation was at the time. We've noted the connection between him and Ty Simpson in Alabama, who were very close friends, and it looks like he has a good chance to win that Alabama job right now. So a lot of stuff that went into it with that, but I don't think it was realistic to keep any one of those guys.
Yeah, look, I love Horton. Mario signed him. We interviewed him. He was great. We were the first ones. You go back and listen to those old episodes, like literally the first practice of spring. That was like right when we started going daily. We said Isaiah Horton is a whole new player. He looks like an NFL receiver. We love Isaiah Horton, and I think he's going to have a really good year for Alabama. CJ Daniels is going to give you some of that style of player, more experience. Maybe Horton has a little more downfield.
I think it hurts more because you saw him develop over the couple years here. So that's why it's annoying if you're a Canes fan, right?
For sure. But I think CJ Daniels gives you a lot of that. And if CJ Daniels gets back his speed and explosiveness from what you saw at Liberty, which I think he can post-surgery, and I saw some of those flashes in the closed practices, I think he's going to make up for a lot of that, and he can get downfield like Horton as well. Horton didn't even get downfield for us last year. I know he can because he did it in practice, but that's also a projection. So really what I'm talking about is a different style of receiver that we didn't even have on the roster last year. If you look at the Miami Hurricanes last year, number 1 offense in the country, number 1 passing game in the country, by a lot, right, on both fronts. I think the thing you looked at that you didn't have last year was that go ball, that pure speed, right? I mean, how much pure speed did you have on the roster last year at receiver? I think Sam Brown was probably pretty explosive. He had the one play against USF with that cover 2 hole shot that he took to the house. But other than that, you didn't have a lot of pure speed at receiver. You had Restrepo, who was quicker than he was fast, obviously. Horton, who, even though I think he can go deep, he was more of a slant in breaking route, using his body type catcher. Jacoby George didn't give you that deep ball, at least last year, didn't get going. So that was missing from last year. And you still had the number 1 offense in the country with Cam Ward being so dynamic and all those other guys playing their role. But I think that's what you're missing here, is just a guy's going to get down the field. Eric Singleton, to me, is like, if you put Eric Singleton on this team with Carson Beck, you're talking about an offense I feel good about is the best offense in the country. And I say Miami was willing to talk to Eric Singleton. That means they knew generally what his price was. They knew, if we get an Eric Singleton, we can't do X, Y, Z with other positions. And they still brought him on campus and try to sign him. So I think take that information and extrapolate that to this portal season and see who comes available that fits that profile. I think you'll get a better idea of what Miami's looking for, what Miami needs in this offense to really take it to the next level. Carson Beck had Arian Smith last year, hit him for a lot of deep balls, bouncing off Arian Smith's face mask. I mean, some of the worst hands I've ever seen on a receiver that was in that prominent a profile, a program like Georgia. I mean, the guy couldn't catch. So getting Arian Smith that can catch, I think Carson Beck's going to be able to make some plays down the field. And then the depth question, P, which is this spring. So you didn't have Josh Moore in the spring game. He was a very big part of the offense all spring. You didn't have JoJo Trader.
Chance Robinson
continues to be nicked up. So really, you saw, if you were there at the spring game, it very quickly went to walk-ons. And I think that's something Miami's trying to avoid. They want to play with a lot of receivers. I think you'll see potentially a second depth piece, but it's not going to be the big bullet like a Singleton would have been, just from a financial standpoint. That's how I see this playing out. Again, this is not based on information necessarily right now. I haven't gotten the fresh Portal Eve scoop. I'm going to get you that. I'm going to drop it in the bank. This is just my kind of read of the situation based on what I know and what I saw in spring.
We're getting some questions here. Anthony Manzano in particular asking about like who we expect to enter the portal. And guys, we're not going to speculate on that. Of course, there's going to be entries. That's the name of the game. Expect multiple, probably both sides of the ball. And that's just what it's going to be. And of course, we'll have you covered when all that stuff happens.
All right, P.
And then of course the follow-up question is, do we expect it to be any big names or big contributors? No idea. Anything's on the table.
So what we got next, Pete?
So it's funny because our buddy Christianville might have been reading our notes earlier. He had a comment earlier that kind of hit things on the head for
Did he have it in order too?
For the needs. He didn't have it in order, I don't think. But do you want to stay on the offensive side of the ball here or go over to
Let's go to defense. Let's go to defense, Pete.
Okay.
What we got?
So let's say defensive back, safety in particular, I would say. I would think that's got to be a pretty high priority for them.
Yeah, so you had the second best safety in the portal, one of the top players in the portal last cycle, the winter cycle, with Zechariah Poyser out of Jacksonville State, beat Georgia for him, beat other schools, Florida for him, and those schools were looking at him as a starter, right? It wasn't like Jaden Harris where Georgia brought him in to be special teams, depth kind of guy that can develop Poyser was pursued as a starter. That was his price tag. Miami's able to land that one, and so far, so good. I think we're very, very happy with what we got with Zechariah Poyser. He's the kind of safety you need at the University of Miami. The other spot, Dylan Day has showed some really nice flashes, but inexperienced, right? Played at a lower level of football in Louisiana. Not that Louisiana doesn't have incredible football, but he was at the basically like the 1A level of Louisiana. Played all over the field. Comes here, learning the safety position, learning the nickel position too, and then also really excelling on special teams. So just experience-wise with Dylan Day, to throw him out there and say he's going to be our guy, it gives you some concern. Safety is a pretty important position. It's the last line of defense. He will play, but that's the concern there. Zaquan Patterson, been injured, inconsistencies there. Obviously, you love the talent and the ability to strike, but that's not something you can necessarily rely on as we sit here today. So I think that other safety position, you do need some help. And for me personally, what I think we need is, look, I'd love to say, hey, go get Sean Taylor in the portal, write a check. It's not how it works. Poyser is a very complete safety. He can cover, he can hit. Poyser is premium. I'm not sure there's going to be a safety as good as Poyser in the portal. The only safety that was as good as Poyser in the portal last cycle in winter was Dylan Thieneman, who went to Oregon. Poyser was right behind him. So to assume a level of that guy, a guy at that level is going to be available, number one, and then you're going to be able to get him number two. There's other teams that need safeties too. So I'm not even saying that. What I think we could use is like, and I'll call it an Al Blades type. Those of you who remember Al Blades, the late Al Blades, RIP, not junior, senior. He was not a Sean Taylor and Ed Reed. I think he was like a 7th round draft pick, 6th round draft pick. Maybe it was the equivalent of what's now a day 3 guy. But he was extremely tough, extremely physical and strong. And he was a major tone setter on this team. He was an emotional leader. He was a veteran. And you see the old videos, he kind of really set that toughness level for the team. Now, look, maybe Al Blades don't exist anymore because of the way the game has changed. You can't hit people over the middle like you used to. Kids are just not as physical. I've heard coaches complain about that. But I think that type of guy who maybe a little tight in coverage, maybe you don't love having him lined up with like one of these extremely speedy slot receivers. And that's why maybe he's in the portal and not in the draft, right? That's why he's available to you. But if you get a guy at safety who is smart, who is physical, who will tackle, and who will help elevate kind of the juice on the defense, I think you're adding a piece to this defensive unit that we could really use.
Yep, without a doubt. And I mean, I agree that I think Dylan Day is as Carl Davis says, love Dylan Day potential right there. We've been talking about him from practice 1 or 2, essentially. And I think he could seize that. I really do think he could be that guy there. I think safety is a position you do want experience. So it is one of those things where you have the opportunity to sell some playing time, right? This isn't some of these spots that you're bringing someone in. You have the understanding that they may not be the lead player in that position, but I think that there's a real potential to be a starter at that spot if you're someone coming in from the portal.
Yeah, absolutely. Dylan Day, I've used this comparison before. Sheldrick Redwine just kind of reminds me of that trajectory.
That's what Kevin Dennis has said. Sheldrick Redwine type.
Yeah, I mean, he played all over the field in high schools. Redwine was like that in high school as well.
And guys, we're getting comments on Zaquan Patterson saying BA says you just described Zaquan. Wyman Wells says isn't that what Zaquan's supposed to be? If someone's been nicked up and been hurt, we can't rely on them at this point, right? And it's not. I don't think it's anything that's gonna keep them out of like camp or anything, D. But yeah, you got to work with what you've got. And listen, you have a year of film on Patterson too, so like they know what they've got, and I think actions will speak with every position. Actions speak louder than what guys' recruiting rankings were.
Yeah, and you want consistency, to your point, Pete. Notice I said veteran. Notice I said guy who's played, right? That's, I think, what you're looking for at safety. At least I would be looking for is someone who he's been in the games. He's made the tackles, right? He's seen the offenses. He can communicate, right? That's another part. You heard Coach Heatherman talk a lot about communication. That's big in this defense. And it's hard to communicate if you're young and you don't, you're still kind of trying to figure out what's going on. different defense with Guidry last year, but I think we missed Cam Kitchen's ability to line people up and get guys going. Poyser will help there. I think you need more. And again, this is my personal opinion. This is not something that's been told to me, but I would lean more towards physical, brings juice, intelligent.
You have the Marquise Williams type who we are excited about and think he's made progress. Made a nice play on the goal line with a stop in the backfield as well, which is that's the stuff that you want to see him add to his game and be consistent with. But yeah, you need that tone setter, which we've used that term a few times over spring. Yeah,
that's where I think, and we're talking about bullets, by the way. So when I say bullets, I mean, you cannot, that's one thing that happens with the portal. Like I just had this debate on the board. People were like, oh man, we need a starting caliber defensive tackle. It's like, okay, well, you know what those cost? We got Barrow last year. It wasn't cheap. And we got Justin Scott, 5-star, ready to explode. David Blay, number 2 ranked.
Blay was not cheap either.
Not cheap. Is number 2 ranked defensive tackle in the portal. We got over Penn State. So we'll get to that position in a second. But like, you don't just go and say, we want the best at every position. Hey, I'd love to get a Damian Martinez at running back so we could just have 3 stud running backs again. It doesn't work that way. You need to make choices. So to me, wide receiver, use a bullet on that wide receiver, that top wide receiver, impactful wide receiver. I won't call it a wide receiver 1, but I would call it an experienced playmaker with speed. Proven playmaker with speed, which that's going to be expensive. With safety, proven, smart, physical safety, that may be expensive. Mish Powell was not cheap. Different kind of player, more cover guy, also very smart, but maybe a more like a physical version of a Mish Powell, I think is what you'd want for this particular defense, because Poyser does some of the things coverage-wise that Mish gave you last year. That's how I would be looking at it, and that would be my second bullet. Right. I went through the bullets there. To me, that's the second big bullet, would be a safety that starts and that is close to the top of the market.
So let's stay on the defense and go to the defensive line.
And Brennan Goins hit it right here. Do we see a rotational DT as a must? Or we saw it with Josh Horton, D. Russell, Simpson, A. Jones, rounding out the depth. So I would say rotational DT is a must. So that's on my list right here. That's what we're talking about here. I wouldn't put in the same category as wide receiver at safety, where I think those positions you want to get a starter. Like you want to look at when the top names come on the market, we know they are, because once one of those big names hits the portal market, we get about 1 million tweets at us, and it's people go crazy. D tackle, I think we're not going to be playing in that sandbox. That was Simeon Barrow last year. Miami was after Derek Harmon, who's going to be his first, second-round pick out of Oregon. Miami it was after both of those guys. They were after that caliber of defensive tackle. It cost a lot of money. You have to outbid people, and Miami did so. Simeon Barrow, first-team All-ACC. Defense struggled, but that was obviously worth it as far as what we got. This year, Justin Scott is a 5-star, top 10 player in the country, defensive tackle, who is starting to really play well as a sophomore. You do not want to put him on the bench, right? That's why you recruit 5-star players, top 10 players in the country, to develop them, to play them, for them to make an impact, and then go pro. That's just how it is. So Scott is on that trajectory. So far, so good. No issues there. He's a starter. Blay, we mentioned, number 2 defensive tackle in the portal last cycle. You got him over Penn State. He's going to go probably to the pros, maybe more of a day 3 guy right now, but someone who's going to play in the pros. He's going to start. You paid a lot of money to get him. And then Ahmad Moten developed him, but he's been good. As far as if he's your 3rd defensive tackle as a senior with a senior body and experience he has playing against the Floridas and teams like that, I feel good about those 3. Is it going to be, what you saw in the 90s and the 80s with the Canes, with Vince Wilfork and Matt Walters and William Joseph? I mean, no, I'm not going to say it's that. Is it what Georgia trotted out a couple of years ago? No, I'm not going to say it's that. Is it what even Ohio State, right, had, or Michigan had the last couple of years? I don't think it's there. Maybe if Justin Scott makes a leap, possible, but I wouldn't say it. But you're not going to change that right now here in this window. It's not economically feasible. I'm not sure that player exists, and you've got good enough guys. Where we need help, I think, is that 4th defensive tackle, like Brandon was saying, just to add some depth, because Horton's been banged up. Ortavius Jones showing flashes, still learning. Dante Simpson really showing a lot of flashes, but I think he's better as your 5th DT, kind of how Justin Scott was this year, where you don't rely on him, but he plays and you get him up to speed. So next year he can start potentially. That was a really, talk about things that you feel good about coming out of spring. Dante Simpson, a 3-star looking like he does. he looked like a high 4-star type talent, which was not what you paid for. It's not what you recruited. I'm sure, he's going to start making plays, and, you have to treat him that way. But that's the kind of guy that I think you put as your fifth DT and work him in, battle with Artavius Jones. We need a fourth defensive tackle who's played, who's not necessarily a star, but has size, is older, is over the age of 21, and that knows he's going into a rotation. Sure, it's not going to be cheap necessarily, but someone who's going into a rotation and knows that, their job is to be a veteran, play their role, and really maximize the snaps they have. I think that's where we look at DT.
Yeah, and there's some comments here saying, is this more important than linebacker? This is not in order, guys. This is just kind of, we're just kind of throwing.
Well, but I will say,
I'm not as. We'll get to linebacker now, but I'm not as concerned as it is maybe some other people.
Me neither, especially after the last couple weeks. But look, is it in order? I don't know, but to this point, I'd say it's in order for me. Meaning, if I'm ordering it in terms of money, which is, I'm trying to be frank about this because this is what it is. This is the real world of the portal. This is why we tell people sign up canesconnection.com/CIS. Which, by the way, Pete, pull this up while we're talking about this. We're talking so much about money. Let's just get to the goods here before we keep going further. canesconnection.com/CIS. You want to talk about all these players, what this is all about? I will tell you what it's about. It's about canesconnection.com/CIS. Those of you who signed up for Canes Connection, we had a private event after the spring game, which was awesome. Francis Mao and Noah was signing autographs, taking pictures. Mark Fletcher,
Popo,
who we're going to talk about here in a second. Hayden Lowe, which is that's why you recruit on the D-line. The guy, I want to give him a 6-star after meeting him and seeing him in person. But that's why we do all this, is canesconnection.com. Sign up /CIS is a special offer for Canes Insight readers. You get it right there. And you get access. If you use that promo code CIS, meaning Canes Insight, you just Pete, drop the link here in the YouTube, in the chat. canesconnection.com/CIS. Use that address and you get access to private Zooms, which I'll be doing, which I could say things without worrying about Gators recording it and putting it on the internet, and answer questions you have and give you the absolute most direct, specific info about where this Canes Connection money is going. But this is what it is. Join the team. It's easy to talk about. We need this and that. If you're going to spend money on the Canes, and I know most people do in some form or fashion, whether it's gear, whether it's alcohol at tailgates, whatever, spend it on what matters, which is the players coming to the University of Miami. And join canesconnection.com/CIS. Appreciate everybody's support. All right, so back to the tackle. I think that's where we're at. Rotational guy. And in terms of order, I would say receiver, that to me is the biggest bullet. I would say a physical safety would be my second bullet. Smart physical safety would be my second bullet if I'm prioritizing. Starter caliber player for both of those. Now DT, more of a rotational player, but still rotational DT, that still costs money because it's such a tight position on the market. So, we'll see there. But I think that probably is my order. Linebacker, let's put it on the same level as D tackle. Let's go to it right now. So linebacker, P, you hinted at it. What did you see from the linebackers in the spring that makes you feel good?
I had heard, and I said this earlier in the spring, that they really like Popo, more than I think people realized. And remember, Popo was coming on last year before the injury, had that big play against Louisville. He's quick, he's tough, he's physical. I don't know if you want to always leave him isolated on a linebacker, but on a running back, but he can, I think he can run better than some of the backers that have played that position at Miami the last few years. And again, in terms of leadership, what you're looking for at that position, very well respected. Him, Basanth, who we didn't see play the other day. Some of the young guys we're excited about, like Kellen Wiley from a body type standpoint, Darius Hayes. But Popo, and I think Wesley Basanth, has been a little maligned over his career, but I think took a step forward last season. Someone made a comment here. Let me try to find it. Basically, I think it was Nico Jones. He said, I'm of the belief that our linebackers didn't play to their potential because of the scheme, not the players. We saw Kiko Mauanoa test extremely well throughout the combine and pro day process. He's a guy who has helped himself tremendously in the build up to the draft here. Probably going to get drafted like 4th to 6th round potentially because of how well he ran. So you can't say that there wasn't necessarily talent in place there.
No, at all. And I think, look, here's a perspective for you on linebacker. This is how I try to think about these things. If Wesley Besaint jumped in the portal to on Wednesday, what do you think other fan bases are going to be doing when they see his stats, his production, some of his highlights? You don't think they're going to be saying, we need this guy, and a bidding war kind of starts? If another team's Wesley Besaint came available, you don't think Miami fans are going to be saying, got to get this guy, we need this dude? So,
and Alderman is solid. He's better than people realize also.
Yep. So I think after seeing the spring game, full contact, I feel better about our linebackers. I think Wes, solid player, been around, leader. He's a senior now, is physically a senior. He's got athletic tools. Popo, now a junior, same thing, athletic tools. These are guys everybody recruited. These are guys that would have high markets if they were in the portal. So I feel good about those two guys. And then Alderman, you mentioned, I think he played that well last year he looked a lot better at Louisville the year before. I thought we'd get a little more from him. So hopefully with this new scheme, he's more like what you saw at Louisville. If a spectacular player comes available who has Miami interest and it just makes sense, this is not fixed. You kind of react to what the market gives you sometimes or what the portal gives you. And you say, man, listen, I wasn't planning on taking a premier linebacker and spending that money, but this guy's a superstar and he wants to come to Miami. You make it work. But right now, this would have been higher on my list like before spring. It's kind of lower on my list now. And I think monitor the situation. If somebody fits and is going to help, bring him in. But it's not – I'd actually put safety, starting caliber safety, higher on the list and more worthy of a bullet than linebacker. But again, some of this depends on what comes in the portal.
Yep, without a doubt. All right, so we got one more spot here.
Yeah. Let's get to running back here. So, in terms of running back, we have obviously, and thank the Lord that there were no major injuries at this position. Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, Mark Fletcher. You could put them however you want. Those guys were your 2 and 3 last year. Our running game was incredible last year. Top 5 in yards per carry, converted everything. Really gave Cam Ward the opportunity to have such a dominant passing game. Not that he didn't do his part, but there was a big difference between Cam Ward at Washington. I make this point a lot, but I think when the draft comes, you guys are going to realize this. So Cam Ward at Washington had Kyle Williams and Joshua Kelly. Josh Kelly was like close to 1,000-yard receiver in the Big 12 last year, leaving Washington State. Kyle Williams is going to get drafted before any of our receivers. In fact, Kyle Williams might get drafted way before any of our receivers. So Cam Ward had really good receivers at Washington State. Didn't have the offensive line protection, which we talked about at length, and didn't have the running game. Washington State's running game was terrible. As a result, the Washington State offense, even with, he was still Cam Ward, he was still the best quarterback around. The offense was mediocre because despite having this superstar quarterback and these great receivers, you didn't have protection, you didn't have a running game. Our running game really, I think, was almost underrated last year. Top 5 in yards per carry, like I mentioned, converted everything, always ahead of the down and distance. We were the best third down team by a mile, not only because the running backs converted third downs when they were close, but also because Cam Ward had 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4. He was never in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11. We never took losses. So I think the running game was awesome last year. It's going to be hard to get Damian Martinez.
That not to cut you off, but that's the tough thing about running back, man, is like you have two guys who are pretty solidly as the 1 and 2 right now. Like, how are you convincing a guy come be running back number 3 or 4 over here? That's a tough, as a running back in the portal, that's going to have other options to go to.
Exactly. So last year you had Martinez, NFL back. I think he's underrated in the draft just because it's such a deep class. This guy's a stud to me. Fletcher and Lyle, who are your top 2 backs now. Then you had A.J. Allen, who's going to start for FIU, starting caliber back. I think he's going to be a very, very impactful G5 player, could easily play in the Power 4 level. Then behind that, you had Chris Johnson, who's going to go to SMU. And I'm saying it now. I think he will be successful there. I've always been a Chris Johnson fan. I know his instincts weren't there at Miami, but I think as the game slows down, his elite speed is going to become more of a weapon. So those are real guys. You have 5 real guys plus Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, who is going to help us this year. So that depth was unusual. The reason that depth was unusual is because as we had, spring last year, just rewinding to spring in 2024, Mark Fletcher was injured. You didn't know if he was going to come back. That was dicey. Remember that he was going to play in the season. Jordan Lyle hadn't gotten here yet. A.J. Allen was hurt. Chris Johnson was playing. And really Lofton was your best tailback during the spring. So Martinez was like a huge need, and that was one of our big bullets. Like, talk about the big bullets that we talked about, like how wide receivers a number one big bullet. Our number one big bullet last spring was probably D-line and then Fletcher at running back. So we used a lot of capital to get.
You mean Martinez?
Oh, sorry, Martinez. Yeah, we used a lot of capital to get Martinez at running back. So that this year is different. There's not that huge gap. A.J. Allen we got when we had Parrish and Chaney, right? So we are now, if you're a running back, you're looking at a different situation than when we got those guys. That was kind of like a perfect storm where you have so many backs at once. It's just not going to, it's hard to repeat that. So like a guy like A.J. Allen wants to start. He's going to start.
Yeah, and look, Kyle has a comment here, which I get. It's the second time we've had a comment like this. And it kind of goes to your point. He says, my whole deal with players leaving like Horton and Chris Johnson, why not just pay up and keep them, and then you have to pay plenty in the spring to bring someone from another program and learn a new offense. Chris Johnson was coming into this year as running back number 3, once again, going into his 3rd year at Miami. Miami would have loved to keep him. I don't think they wanted to lose him, and I don't think it was necessarily a money thing. But if you're Chris Johnson and you're being offered an opportunity that I'm sure you just saw Brashard Smith do what he did, it's not that Miami didn't want to keep this guy, but if the money is the same, which I don't think, again, this was a money move necessarily. He's going for the better opportunity. Horton, again, Miami did not have a quarterback at that time. I don't think the money was very far off from what he wanted. And I don't think he's getting paid much more at Alabama than he would have gotten paid at Miami. Just saying that. But again, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it's complicated with Horton. There's a lot of stuff there. I don't think Miami was pushing Horton out the door. But, sometimes it's like, think of it like free agency. When a free agent leaves a team, there's a lot of things going on. There's what about draft picks coming in? You have a young player. I have to pay X to this guy. I'm going to pay this. There's just, think of all the things that GM has to think about when they're dealing with free agency, aside from, hey, would this player help us next year? And that helps frame the decision. I think they would have liked to have Horton back, but to replace Horton with CJ Daniels and how that turned out, I think they're happy with it. Now it's about getting something that Horton himself was not going to provide, which is that speed. And with Chris Johnson, he just wanted to play. I mean, yeah, I don't think there was anything to that other than he wanted to play. You just signed Gerard Pringle, who, even though he's 2 years younger than Johnson, I think he's probably more ready to play as a running back just because he has less of a learning curve. He's more developed as an actual running back. So, Johnson, I think, made the smart decision for himself. Miami would have loved to have him here and doing his thing, but he wanted to play. When you have 5 backs that all think they're a starting back and other teams would give them starting opportunities, it's hard to keep them. So that's where this running back depth situation becomes tricky. But look, just looking at this year's team, not comparing it to last year because that's just hard to replicate. I think Jordan Lyle can do more than he did last year, right? We agree with that, Pete?
Mm-hmm.
I think Fletcher, healthy for a full offseason. First full offseason for Fletcher in like his whole career. He was always hurt in high school too, like in terms of the offseason. So I think those two you can expect elevated roles and feel good about. They're going to run all over the ACC, and they're going to give you a chance in these big games because they're so physical and tough. Third back, Gerard Pringle in the spring game, I think, was a big moment because he was injured in camp, missed time for various things. Nothing to be alarmed about or that gives anyone any pause, but he missed time. Plus, running backs don't get tackled to the ground in spring. Pass blocking for a smaller back, that's always going to be tough. So, like, he was doing more of the things that he's not good at and less of the things that he's really good at, which is running full contact, making plays. But in the spring game, which was his first full contact exposure, I believe, meaning tackle to the ground, he showed up. He was one of the standouts of the day, showed his speed, was able to make guys miss in traffic, really looked good. So I think his stock is up, and you feel better about his readiness after a summer working out. Chris Wheatley-Humphreys put on weight. He looks good. He kind of reminds you like a Henry Parrish type where he's just going to be slithery and reliable. So you feel okay about those guys. Elijah Lofton, I believe my hot take with Elijah Lofton is everybody calls him an undersized tight end. I think he's an oversized running back that can catch like a receiver. That's how I view him at the NFL level. He can help you in the running game. Maybe you need a tight end to help have him more carries at running back. So when we say running back depth, maybe tight end depth allows you to use Lofton more, and that solves this problem. But I think really what you're looking for here, there's a position that one injury to Lyle, one injury to Fletcher, and you pray it doesn't happen, could change real fast. I think what you're looking for here is a guy that maybe hasn't played a lot, a size speed guy, someone with the talent that you like, that's just frustrated with the situation. And he says, look, I want to play, but I know if I go to Miami, I could have a chance to play, and I'm going to play behind a great offensive line. So I know once I get my opportunity, I can go show off what I got and succeed and go pro. Running backs, you only have so many carries in your body. So even though all these guys want to play, it's not like quarterbacks, if you're like an Emory Williams or whatever, you want to get reps because reps are everything. Even if it's tough reps and you're getting beat up a little bit, you're learning. Running back, you only have so many reps in your body. So if I'm an agent for a running back, and let's say it's a blue chip 4-star guy that went to somewhere and didn't work out, I say, listen, man, you go to Miami, you sit tight, you potentially could play this year. You're definitely going to get a chance to start next year. You're going to be fresh as a daisy, and you're going to be running behind a great offensive line that makes you look good. That to me seems like a good situation. So in terms of running back depth, I think that kind of 4-star that hasn't played market is an interesting one.
Kyle says Ray Joseph should have gotten running back snaps with Tony's emergence.
Yeah. There's a difficult thing. By the way, I think he can run the ball in packages. I think you might still see that. With Ray, it's hard because if you want to play running back, you got to bulk him up. And if you bulk him up, I think you're taking away a lot of what he was known for in high school, which you haven't seen yet, which is that speed and quickness. He looked a lot quicker in spring, a lot faster to me. Maybe it's just not wearing that 35 all the time, but he just looked faster and quicker to me in spring. And I think if you had him part-time at running back, you're bulking him up and then slimming him down. Now, is he a Brashard Smith that's better as a running back full-time? Maybe. In that case, you just put him on a bulking process. But I think right now, slot, you feel good with him and Tony, at least I do, and you look at other places.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you wouldn't have a backup slot, or you need 2 slots.
Yeah, it's
I guess JoJo can play it too.
Yeah,
but I would prefer him on the outside.
Yeah, Dalen Upshaw can play there, I think, too, everywhere. There's different options, but I think Ray. I want Ray to get a chance. I don't think he's going to be the only slot out there. It's not going to be, hey, Restrepo's gone, it's Ray. I think Tony, part of this also is you don't want to block Tony, right? I think that's actually the main thing, is you do not want to block Malachi Tony from playing. But at the same time, you don't want to just say, Tony, you're our slot, there's no backup, or there's no other guy that can play there. So I think Tony and Ray is a nice combo because you're allowing Malachi to fly and potentially be that guy that we saw in the spring game and throughout spring, quite frankly. While at the same time, Ray is there to make sure you're not relying on Tony, to push Tony, for them to push each other. And he's been working hard for his opportunity. So I like that competition.
He's gained some confidence this spring too, which he needed.
100%. And then, yeah, running back, look, Pringles, I feel better about this position than I did in maybe 2 weeks ago, kind of like linebacker, especially because Pringle was so good in the spring game. I don't read too much into spring games, but when it comes to running backs, and even linebackers to an extent, you don't get a chance to see tackle to the ground, full contact in practice that much anymore. The rules just don't allow it. You're worried about injuries. So things like a live scrimmage, which we had one this spring, and then the spring game, those are gold because you get an opportunity to see tackling to the ground and really evaluate both your running backs and your linebackers. I think spring game in particular, you feel great about that goal line stand by Popo, some of the things that the first team did, and you feel great about some of the things Pringle did, showing his explosiveness, showing his ability to make guys miss in traffic with live bullets. Feel very good about what Pringle can potentially do in a rotation, but we need another body there, in my opinion. Maybe that's Lofton playing more running back and you get another tight end, but something needs to be added
we had
to that mix.
Christianville mentioned, he said, how about go get the Cal tight end who just entered the portal and let Lofton play running back plus everything else on the field.
Cal tight end in the portal. I missed that.
Yesterday.
Who was that, Pete?
That was their main receiver last year, the big tight end who actually killed
the guy
Miami.
that caught that long touchdown against us?
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, he was a good tight end.
Not a bad idea. You know, Carson Beck likes to throw to the tight ends. Obviously, Lofton fits in there. Lofton's going to play a lot. My hot take, and again, maybe I'm wrong, is I think people say Lofton's an undersized tight end. I think Lofton, when you look at him, when it's all said and done, is going to be a 240-pound tailback who can also block at fullback and who can also line up wide and make guys miss or play H-back. That's kind of, I see him being a big running back, and then you have big tight ends also, as opposed to having an undersized tight end and then running backs. That makes sense.
Yeah. Guys, we're over 1,200 right now, so hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to have you guys covered like crazy the next few weeks here with the portal. Obviously, Miami's going to lose some, as we've mentioned earlier in the show, so we'll talk about the impact whenever guys do enter the portal. We'll do shows on that, and then, of course, what we're talking about right here, who's Miami going to bring in, breaking down the pickups when they do happen.
It kind of like covered, like maybe Yuca covered in Mojo at Islas Canarias Express, the #1 Cuban restaurant on planet Earth. 40-plus years here in Miami, Florida. They've won every award there is to win as far as the best croqueta, the best Cuban sandwich, you name it, they've won it. This is an institution in Miami, Florida. I always tell a story, Anthony Bourdain coming down to Islas Canarias, driving all the way, down A Street, all the way out to the sticks, really, just to have this food. You could have been in Miami Beach, could have been in Wynwood. He went out to Islas Canarias, the original classic location. But Islas Canarias Express right there in Dayland's got all the classic items, all the classic quality control. The owner of the shop, my man John Andrade, is right there working it, so it's top quality. And lunch, breakfast, dinner, you're probably going to pass through that area at some point if you're working in Dade County. Islas Canarias Express, the absolute best in the business. Kwame Wells saying, can we send coaches in the portal like Guidry? I think he did go in the portal. It says covered in Mojo, major pause. What's the pause about? Is Pete, you're up with the kids lingo. Did I miss something?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, the sauce is a Cuban sauce used with yuca. What am I missing here? So anyways, let's see what Hassan's got to say. I agree with Pete. If Miami doesn't get a home run wide receiver in the portal, it goes with what we have. You don't want to get a receiver just to have one. I agree with that. But I do think they might get
they need at least one. Whether they need two or not, I think could still be TBD, but one for sure. But like I said, got to be someone you think is raising the level of the room.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. This is a great one here. Hype us up about baseball. I'd be happy to. And happy to talk about our friends. You can pull up the website. I won't do I'll do that on the spot this time, Pete. Don't even worry about it. Pull up the website. My man, Jim Sala. This is Hawk Tua's lawyer. So you saw Hawk Tua get the SEC off her back. No problem. My man, Jim Sala, Kane's super fan, was giving quotes to TMZ, kind of gloating. He wasn't gloating, but I'm gloating for him about how his client prevailed in this SEC investigation. That's Sal Assereed and Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities, regulatory matters, broker-dealer, investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, securities arbitration litigation. Firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Their lawyers have 100 years of collective experience handling securities and white-collar criminal matters, including investigations, regulatory proceedings, enforcement actions, federal, state, and administrative courts. So Jim is the best in the business. Holler at him. And great guy as well. So he's a baseball guy. We got to talk baseball. Miami ends up winning the series against Duke. And I was talking to some friends, pull up the schedule now as I look at this. The path to potentially making a regional, which I think is your realistic goal for the season, and let's say realistic standard for the season, if you're evaluating where they're at, it's feasible. So you just won a series against Duke. You won a series against Pitt, which was a big one. You won your midweek against Bethune-Cookman, who beat us last year. Now you're looking at FAU at home. Not easier at home than up in Boca, but always a tough opponent. 3 games against Georgia Tech at home. FIU, Always, again, these midweeks are tougher than the average midweek, but it is what it is. At FIU, 3 games against Boston College in Fenway Park, very winnable. NC State at home. You're going to have a reunion for the 1985 team. Another game against FIU. Virginia, which is a tough team. And then finish with Notre Dame, which is potentially a sweep situation if you really play well. So if you can win these series and sweep the Notre Dames of the world, win your midweeks, I think this team is poised to have a winning record in the ACC. Not saying I'm predicting it. I'm saying that's what needs to get done. You would have a winning record in the ACC if you win all the series, sweep Notre Dame, and then you would be pretty much in position, I think, to at least be on the bubble, if not be projected to go to a regional before you enter the ACC tournament. So it's there. We'll see if it happens. There's been a huge shakeup in the rotation. Nick Robert, your Friday starter, guy that started the first game of the season for the Miami Hurricanes, out with Tommy John, which is a bummer. I saw him at the
spring game. Yeah.
Yeah, great guy. He said he was feeling good. He's going to come back throwing harder, but he's out. Brian Walters, who was your closer, well, he was a reliever last year, converted to starter this year, now back in the closer role, which I think probably suits him and his skill set. You're relying on 2 young arms, Tate Darius, who was also at the spring game, and then AJ Siskar, along with Griffin Hugas, who's been your best
sort of
CL
comment
Smooth.
Right here, D.
Appreciate you, man. That's my guy. That's
CL Smooth says just signed up for Canes Connection.
I knew this was a classy guy when I saw the picture with the tux. The guy looked ready to go to a gala, looking like $1 million, and now he is putting it. He's not just all. It's not all for show. It's not just a profile picture. This is a man of the community, a man who's about what he says. He doesn't just say, "You got to do this, got to do that." He does his part to make it happen. CL Smooth, you're the man. Appreciate you signing up and being part of the solution for Canes Connection. But on the baseball side, which also needs help from Canes Connection as well, this is all part of it. You got 2 freshmen, AJ Siskar, Tate Darius, 2 righties, Siskar from Broward, Darius from New Jersey. Both of them have shown real flashes. I feel very good about the pitchers that have been brought in by this staff as far as the freshmen. I think you've really hit on Darius. Siskar looks like a really good player. Mikey Fernandez has had some trouble finding the strike zone, but he's got a really great arm from the left side. Lachi Colleta, another power arm. I think he will develop as a downhill power thrower. So you got some nice freshman arms, but you're counting on them on this home stretch. Plus Griffin Hugas, who's been your ace, needs to be that ace. Had a tough, really his first real tough outing this last week. I think he's going to bounce back huge against Georgia Tech and really set the tone. But you need those guys to carry you through here. Cuvée carried you on Sunday. He needs to just get hot. Not that he's had a bad season. He hasn't. But when he gets hot, he's like unstoppable, best third baseman in the country. You need some of that energy to close out. And look, you'll have a chance, man. So we'll see how it goes. Going to be a fun game to watch. Georgia Tech, that'll be at the Light. A lot of people think their center fielder, Drew Burris, is the best player in the country. This guy's a power hitting center fielder. A lot of fun to watch. He could be a first pick of the draft when he comes available. I think next year he'll be eligible. So take your kids, come out to the Light this weekend. Check out Drew Burris, number 1 player in the country against Miami Hurricanes, trying to shut him down, take it to him. So I'm excited about baseball, man. I'm excited about where it's going. We got Hassan Chiebs asking for the link to Canes Connection. Pete, put it in the chat. It's going to be canesconnection.com/CIS. Make sure you get that /CIS. Supports us. It also opens up certain content for you guys, including my private Zoom. So canesconnection.com/CIS. Yeah, man, it's fun. What else going on, Pete? Basketball. I saw we were linked to a 6 man of the year.
Well, So I expect this to be an interesting week. We had the 1 official hire on Friday with Andrew Moran. Expect more hires to become official this week, and just should be an interesting week, man. I think people are going to be making decisions this week, and keep it locked on Canes Inside, man. Trenton Breeze will have you covered with everything. I'll drop in here and there, but just stay tuned, man.
He's been working hard, man. Breeze, man. He's been putting in serious work with the articles. He's been putting out new one every single day, it feels like, man. Shout out to Trenton Breeze, the deodorant. He's probably in class right now, listening to the show, not even paying attention to whatever they're trying to teach him up in high school in Kentucky. So yeah. Oh, listen, by the way, if you want to get geared up for this game coming up here this weekend of the series against Georgia Tech, or just in general for the summer, for the spring, getting your wardrobe in order, MiamiHTS.com or the team store physically located next to the Thesis Hotel across the street from the University of Miami. Promo code INSIDE20. You get 20% off your first item. And my first item, I'm looking at it right here, which is going to be those Michelin Nest throwbacks. Sean Taylor, Ed Reed. These are 2001 championship jerseys. You remember the players wearing it. Sometimes the throwbacks are different than what the players wore them in, right? It'll be a throwback with the name, but the jersey's not what jersey the player played in. This is the jersey that we had when we won those 2001 national championship with Ed Reed and his backup, Sean Taylor. Pretty good safety rotation. I think that's probably going to be a little better than what's available for us at the portal here at safety, but who knows? So you use promo code INSIDE20 either on the website or in person. You can just say Canes Insight. They'll tap the button. You get 20% off your first item, which if it's me, it's right there. I don't know, we go to Sean Taylor, the Ed Reed. It's interesting. I always like the 20. I like Ed Reed. But man, Sean Taylor, best football player I've ever seen. That's a good one too.
Hey, A50 Kane says, left the spring game feeling quite a bit more confident in our kicking. It was a bit worrisome. I will tell you, it sounds just a little bit different coming off the boot of Carter Davis.
Yep, yes,
it
sir.
sounds a little different coming off his boot.
Yeah, man. We try to give it to you guys as accurate as we can and ahead of everybody else. So we told you, keep an eye on Carter Davis. He was brought in to kick kickoffs. Abram Murray was the higher ranked kicker out of high school. And Carter Davis hadn't gotten it going as a kicker yet, right? He'd been more of a kickoff guy, big leg. But he's been kicking very consistently, very well in spring. I think that's why he was the first kicker out the door here in the spring game as far as on the field goals. So big leg, never a question. We brought him in for touchbacks, but he's starting to make field goals. So I think that could be something to watch. Could we bring in a kicker in the portal? It could happen, right? I didn't put it on the list, but a kicker in the portal could happen. I haven't gotten I will dig in on that and find out where we're at once the dust is settled and everybody's broken down the spring and watched all the film and seen what's available. But Carter Davis, that leg that you brought in for touchbacks has been getting much better from a field goal standpoint. And that's a positive development, I think, for the Canes.
Sounds a little different off that boot, D. Let me tell you.
I know you're a kicker connoisseur, Pete. I mean, you're a soccer guy, so you're used to evaluating leg strength and kicking power. What do they call it when you're evaluating a soccer player's like kicking power? How does someone who knows about soccer
how much shot power they have?
Shot power.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we know he's got shot power. So is there an accuracy? Like, what do they say for accuracy? They call it shot accuracy. What do they call it?
No, it's just he's got technical ability or not. If
All right, so we know
ability.
We know we got shot power, so we got to develop the technical ability. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Gotta be consistent with the strikes. That's really all it comes down to it. And Carter Davis, he was mighty consistent with those strikes the other day.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, like and subscribe to this show for Carter Davis talk. We'll give it, we're coming every day here daily on the show. So you'll check it out and get the absolute latest on team, portal, recruiting. Portal's going to open up Wednesday. We'll be covering it like always, man. And we're going to give you the absolute latest before you hear it anywhere else. CanesInsight.com. Appreciate everybody that we saw at the spring game showing love. Like I said, I was in a hurry. I said this on the morning show. I was in a hurry going to Titanic to that event for Canes Connection. And so I did some quick daps on the way out. I would love to stay and chat. We'll catch up sometime. But again, appreciate all the Canes Insight fans that were out there and keep supporting the show. Appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe. Go Canes.
Go Canes. See you guys tomorrow, or it's portal season. You never know when you'll see us again.
Never know.